This is the Strait of Hormuz, the world's busiest oil shipping channel. It sits here between Iran and just above the United Arab Emirates and Oman. Despite its small size, it is one of the most important energy corridors in the world. It connects the Persian Gulf all the way down to the Indian Ocean. On a typical day, about 20 million barrels of oil move through this 33-kilometer passage. That's roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply. And you can see why it matters. Around the Gulf are several major producers like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE. Right now, tanker traffic here has slowed because of security concerns and attacks on ships. So the question is, what alternate routes exist?
Can it avoid the Strait of Hormuz and still reach the world markets from some other route? The simplest answer to that is that there are some bypasses, but very little compared to the amount of oil you're looking at.
Well, Saudi Arabia has the largest workaround in the region. This is the east-west pipeline known as Petroline. It starts here, near the Abqaiq processing hub in the eastern oil fields, and runs across the country to the Red Sea port of Yanbu. The pipeline is estimated to be able to move 7 million barrels of oil per day at its maximum capacity. That means Saudi crude can reach global markets without having to pass through the Strait of Hormuz.
There are definitely both geographic and economic limits. I mean, if you were just to zero in on the geography of Saudi Arabia and a lot of the other countries in the region, vast, uninhabited, really harsh condition desert lands. That said, of course, Saudi Arabia did put in that massive east-west pipeline exactly with this in mind, the kind of situation that we are facing today. I do expect that this, what is transpiring now, will probably prompt some of the other countries to make more active efforts and investment in finding alternate routes. At the end of the day, the economics of those routes and the geography will still stand in the way.
The United Arab Emirates has built a similar bypass. This is the Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, or ADCOP. It starts from the Habshan oil fields here in Abu Dhabi and then flows all the way up to the port of Fujairah. Fujairah sits outside the Strait of Hormuz, so tankers can load oil here without having to enter the strait. This pipeline carries around 1.5 million barrels per day. Now, Iran has also built an alternative export route. This is the Gorajask pipeline. It moves crude from facilities inland to the port of Bandar Ejask, also outside the Strait of Hormuz. But the pipeline is relatively small. Current capacity is estimated at about 300,000 barrels per day. And you might wonder, if Iran sits along the strait, why would it need a bypass? Well, Iran built this route so it can continue exporting oil even when traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted.
So the pipeline to Jask, from what I understand, has a very limited capacity. We do not have any evidence as to what extent it has been. It's a relatively new pipeline, and we don't have evidence as to what steady, stable rates it has been able to perform at in terms of passing crude through. But look, as long as Iran is the one that is blockading the Strait of Hormuz, it is hitting ships within the Persian Gulf and in and around the Strait of Hormuz. It doesn't really matter where Iran ships its crude from, whether it does it from inside or outside the Strait of Hormuz.
But most Iranian crude exports still leave from Karg Island. This small island here in the Persian Gulf handles about 90% of Iran's oil shipments. But tankers here still have to pass through the Strait of Hormuz.
The caveat there is that Iran, which ships its own oil mostly from within the Strait of Hormuz, is able to send its oil out. In fact, shipping data show that Iran has been sending about 1 million barrels per day on average since the start of the war. Iran has a natural advantage here, also because none of the other parties involved in this conflict so far, especially the US and Israel, which have been hitting targets in Iran, neither of those parties has attempted to blockade Iranian oil tankers. Now, of course, one can't rule that out. Because we know the US has done that quite successfully just a few months ago with Venezuela. But so far, they haven't done it. They've certainly not attempted to attack the Iranian oil tankers. And all the Gulf states, which have unfortunately also been the recipient of Iranian retaliatory attacks, haven't tried to disrupt or in any way harm Iranian oil traffic either. So those are some of the reasons Iranian oil has continued to pass through quite unhindered.
So Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and even Iran all have routes that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. But even combined and operating at an emergency maximum, they could only move less than half of the oil that normally flows through this narrow corridor. Which is why the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the most critical choke points in global energy supply.